Fortunately, even in terms of supply chains and in terms of planning, that is already there and it has been for years. So we have some stability in regards to the global geopolitics. When you look at the economy globally also, we are now in a sphere and in a path of decimated rating rates in terms of lowering of rating rates across almost all the economies of the world. There is quantitative easing across. The Federal Reserve will be meeting, I think, next week, if not this week. Actually, this week, the Federal Reserve of the US. And whatever that meeting will come up with affects my grandmother's plate in the village, affects many things that we do in our economy. The pity is that there is great expectation that we are likely continue with quantitative easing, will likely continue with expansionary policies in the monetary side in terms of lowering of the lending rates, starting from the Fed rate, CPR rate, and of course, supposed also to go to the private sector, supposed to. So the economies of the world we are buoyant. I mean, we have all the ingredients of an economy to grow. All of them are on the table. When you have rates going down, rates go down because private sector wants to be incentivized. And all those are happening now. In Kenya, we have CPR rates going down. Across almost all the economies in Africa and all the other economies of the world, we have that happening. Expansionary policies are now, and especially on the monetary side. The question we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans, as we enjoy the summer in the economic sphere of the world, how is Kenya taking advantage of that? And just use the data. One, we have a CPR rate coming down. Every other meeting, if not sustaining the previous rate, we are climbing down. But who is benefiting from the lowering of the lending rates in Kenya? And when I talk about economics, I like referring to the government data, because the beauty is that we still have some institutions that give credible data, and especially the CBK and the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Now, we have a situation where Kenya is having expansionary monetary policy and lowering of rating rates. But who is benefiting? Because you have on one side lowering of rates, the same government data then shows that the private sector lending is actually going down, not growing. So in Kenya, monetary easing is purely a debt management tool. Purely. That the only parameter that is being eyed in terms of monetary easing and lowering of rates is basically paying less interest in the domestic debt, and therefore what is supposed to happen is not happening, because always rates should go down as a way of incentivizing private sector. But you have rates going down, but in the same breath and from the same source, then we have a report again on the other side showing that the lending to private sector in Kenya is actually shrinking. And therefore that is a very huge cause of alarm, because we must harness whatever is happening globally, because it doesn't last for too long. Second thing that we have to be aware of, so that we take advantage of what we have now. Economies are always cyclical. Right now, President Trump is almost forcing the Fed that they have to cut the rates. And they will almost, I'm sure they will succumb this week. Now, after that, how is the economy supposed to now behave after that? We have low rates. We will definitely, again, in the next few months, start having a discussion about managing inflation, because those go hand in hand together. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we need to harness what we have now as an advantage globally, make a way of making our private sector buoyant and grow, so that in a rainy day, we'll have institutions that will support our economy. But when it is sunshine, we still cannot give warmth to the business sector or the private sector, because the government is crowding out the private sector from banking, from lending. In our economic, I mean, the easiest chapters of economics, we were told one of the roles of government and a central bank is to release money to the people through many tools, including fiscal policy in terms of spending. So we grew up knowing that the work of central bank, in quotes, is to print money, in quotes because it's figurative, and figure out how this money will end up in my pocket. Through many ways, spending, through financial instruments, and the rest. In Kenya, that has reversed. The work of the central bank now and government is actually to mop up money from the private pockets and then give to the government. That is why you see every month we are having fundraisings from government in terms of raising money. And what has that brought now, up to now? Out of those things that I'm talking about, our national debt now has grown to 12 trillion Kenya shillings. Over. It's now, because we borrow every day on average, maybe we are now talking about 12.4 trillion Kenya shillings. I have figure from the previous times that we talked about debt. And I talked about these figures the other day, which are factual again. And every Kenyan, the picture about Kenya now is that we may have shortfalls, but at least the Constitution guarantees that we get part of the public information for free when you need it. So, the current debt is over 12 trillion shillings. So in a year we are borrowing 1.25 trillion Kenya shillings. And by the way, last year, government went against the law and overborrowed more than it had been budgeted. Because we had budgeted as a country to borrow around 1 trillion Kenya shillings. The government, by the close of the last financial year, actually borrowed more and borrowed 1.25 trillion Kenya shillings. What that means is that we are borrowing around 100 billion every single month. And every single day, including today, Monday. By tomorrow morning, the country will have borrowed 3.5 billion every single day. And therefore, every hour we are talking about around 140 million shillings every hour. So we've been here for 2 hours. So we borrowed that much. And you know, many times I think we need to sober up as a country. Because if we don't sober up, the economy will force us to sober up. And when the economy forces us to sober up, it will not be very easy, like giving a speech as I'm doing today. The ramifications will be dire. Maybe what we need to do is to take some of the people from the National Treasury for a benchmarking trip to Ghana. And they interact with real people, not the economy. You know, many times you talk about jargons, GDP and the rest. You now go and interact with a pensioner in Ghana. Interact with a person who had bought government instruments in Ghana, who after they borrowed too much, they had to call borrowers in a round table and tell them, guys, listen, I know I owe you 1 million shillings, but from today I am the sovereign. I owe you only 700. That's what they call a haircut. Okay, take government to court, you are given even something, you have to a government. Okay, where will you start? Getting a GK vehicle on the road, or where? You see, some of these things, they seem like superlatives, but they are real. The government tells you, you're a pensioner, I owe you this much. But from today, you are taking a haircut of 30%. Haircut means I'm cutting. Not postponing, cutting. Forget everything else, me, I owe you this. That is where Ghana ended. And when you hear us talking about debt, it is because if you reach there, it is catastrophic. and it would affect everyone, and it would affect all the facets of our economy. There is the other thing, so that I wind up with debt, and I'll be very brief today. PS was asked about something I've been talking about called securitization. And when you get a chance, you'll explain to us based on your experience. There are people who want to tell us securitization, you can treat it as something outside of the debt. You'll tell us whether that is possible. Because from where all of us sit, it's not possible. You can't have a shop. You are running a shop in Kakamega, a hardware shop. You take a debt from the local bank. You are supposed to service this debt using, of course, the proceeds from your hardware. Then you go to a different bank and say, please lend me money. Part of the things I sell is cement. So I want to securitize what I get from cement. It will come directly to you. That's what is called securitization. If you're not a different bank, you already have borrowed money from bank A, and you are servicing that debt out of the profit from the entire profit from your hardware. Then you get another bank on the side, and you tell them the revenue from cement and from steel, chuma, ile nauza, it will now be coming to you. And then you want to tell us that is not supposed to affect this other debt. I mean, I keep saying, every time you hear about a big Kizungu Miki context in Kenya, coming from government, you hear a big name like the securitization, it is just supposed to tire you so that you don't question. But something must be happening that is not right. And just do your math, you'll see. I talked the other day about a debt of a boat that was raised by securitizing sports fund to build stadiums. Let me start here. Kenya has always built stadiums. You know, many times you want to appear like we are now, we have innovated ways of building stadiums in Kenya. Kenya has always built stadiums. We have never securitized any revenue. So the issue about building a stadium is not there. The issue is about how are you building. So we end up borrowing around 45 billion Kenya shillings. Whichever method you use, even if you use future value of annuity, or you use a simple arithmetic of interest rate, in 15 years, Kenya will have paid interest rate of over 100 billion on a loan of 45 billion. And those are facts. Then we go and securitize fuel levy. And we say we are building roads with this fuel levy. Let me start here. Kenya has always built roads. All the roads we saw in our villages and estates when we were growing up, it was not black paint painted on our roads. It was tarmac. So it's not a new invention. We have always built tarmac roads. We have always built Mombasa Road is a road that was built many years back. Thika Road, the road to the Western Corridor. It's not new, it has been there. But now, we want to collect money that Kenya is supposed to collect for the next 7 years. We want to collect today and use it today. Now, the government in the ensuing years, what are you going to come to do as government? You know, many times, people are here politically, there is a way people want people to talk, for example, as politicians. But what is more important to talk as a Kenyan today than about the future of our country? We may talk about leading the country, but which country? First address that the country is there. So when the country is there and functioning, you can talk about the other things. And that is why I think these things are very important. So in a nutshell, this is what I'm trying to say. We are borrowing 1.25 trillion every year, 100 billion every month, 3.5 billion shillings every day, around 145 million every hour, but every road you see in Kenya ongoing, is not part of that debt. That is a different debt called securitization of fuel levy. So let no one tell you, we are borrowing this to build roads. No, the debt for building roads is not even there. We are borrowing that money, but when you ask, you'll be told, can't you see we are building even Talanta Stadium? This is the point. The money for building Talanta Stadium is actually not there. It is a different debt, not included in this mainstream debt. The other thing, so that, because it's the same, this issue of debt is big. Now, we want also to expand a lot of things to be seen for optics, as they are also good for the economy. The road from Nairobi to Nakuru is long overdue in terms of expansion. And the people who use that road deserve that road to be dualed. But even the money for dualing Nairobi-Nakuru highway, that money is also not part of the borrowed money, the 12 trillion. That is some other money we are raising through a baptized name called PPP. But that PPP is actually workers' money through NSSF. So NSSF is forced to invest workers' money on a commercial venture called a PPP to build a road from Nairobi to Nakuru. And they are told how to recover their money is to put toll stations, charge motorists, watapata pesa yao hapo. So even the expansion of that road is not part of the borrowed money. So what I'm and again, the Talanta Stadium I talked about, because private sector is rational. A person in the private sector, when you tell them to invest money, it is me and you here. When I call you to invest in an instrument, you are likely to ask me questions. And because the government didn't need to answer many questions, that Talanta board I keep talking about, I request all of you to go and check who bought it. The number one investor in that board was again one of the banks I'll not name, which has attachments with government. And the number two was again NSSF. Number three was the superannuation fund, again money for workers. So if you are raising a board that is attractive, why are private sector not buying? That government money through another way, and especially workers' money, has to be the ones now to be put in that kind of radar. These things are important, and if they are good, then the speech today should not be an accusation. It should be just an opportunity for those who did it to come and inform Kenyans better. And many times I wonder, for example, on securitization of the fuel levy. You are a bank CEO, and you committed money for your shareholders and lend, let's say 50 billion shillings on something called securitization. You have no sovereign guarantee. The 7 shillings on which the money is securitized was just a gazette notice from the minister. If another minister comes tomorrow and writes off the 7 bob, where will this bank, where will the bank recover the money from? If there is other people in terms of policy in Kenya and they don't honor the debt, there's nowhere you can go. But of course the government did that knowingly because of the urgency of the money. Mabanks na wale wengine wamenunua boats, mtajipanga baadaye. As I go to the finish, the things I talked about, we are in summer, that we have rates coming down from last year, should give us a good opportunity to grow. But how are we growing as Kenya? The Kenyan GDP grew by 4.7%, the previous data that we have for 2024. And by that, we extol that growth. But how is it in the region? Kenya was actually the last in terms of growth in our region. Rwanda grew by 8.9% in the same period. Tanzania grew by 5.5% in the same period. Uganda grew by 6.1% in the same period. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to be logical, everyone who has a position to make decisions for our country. So that even as we give good narratives out there, narratives can only sell up to some point. And then from there, the reality knocks the door. Kenya has the potential to be the leader in terms of economic growth in the region. Currently, we are last in all our neighboring countries. I don't think that is something to celebrate. It is something to call us to wonder. Allow me, it's something I forgot, just 1 minute. I talked about Nakuru, Mausamit Road. I mean, Nairobi, Nakuru Road. I call it that way because it's more identifiable that way. That road is part of the road from Mombasa all the way to Malamba. It's part of it. It's a corridor road. Any person who would do just basic empirical analysis of that road, one thing is clear. NSSF, being the lead investor in that road, will never recover the money. But that road also must not be tolled, because for ease of doing business, the reason why other economies would do better than us is when investors start choosing those countries better or more than us. When you come and do any